We had a couple of mailbag questions this episode. First question comes from CT Fazio 24. He asks, would you want to see more Julian at point guard lineups with the team fully healthy? Will, I think I know your answer to this.
Well, I'd say yes, just because I want to see it. And I almost am leaning into saying yes more because he hasn't been good on defense. And I'm just like, would him just getting into a different position almost help with that? But then my question to you would be, let's say he was playing point guard, would that be harder for him defensively, or would he still match up with someone more similar to him?
The thing is, like, Julian at point guard lineups would just be switch all lineups and he would just get hunted. The reason I actually am not totally opposed to it, well, I'm not opposed to most, like, just trying most things, because there are just some of the lineups that we're playing right now that are abysmal, is just because one of our biggest problems defensively right now is just rebounding, and that's true with AG on the floor and off. But if you play some Julian at point guard lineups, you just like get bigger, and maybe defensive rebounding is a little bit better. So like if they accidentally force some misses, even with Julian getting hunted, maybe they could grab a few more of those defensive rebounds. And I think that that's worthwhile.
Or if it meant like playing Jamal less or something, which is weird, like in terms of staggering him.
I mean, like, we have Russ for that, but
they're
just
still
playing.
like
They're just playing
overlapping
Jamal
them
a lot right now. I don't actually understand why they're playing Jamal as much as they are. Like, maybe they're trying to get him into shape. It's not the same. It's not the same issue as with Jokic, where it's like we collapse with him off the floor. To be fair, though, I do have to point out that Russ on the floor without Jokic is substantially more palatable when Jamal is on the floor. So we've talked about,
Right.
the 2-point guard look. Like, I talked about this when we had Ryan on the show. How it was something that we wanted to actively avoid, especially with Jokic off the floor. They're so small, like this, that, and the other. The numbers bear it out this season that actually, like, Russ off the floor without, or on the floor without Jokic is like not survivable. And with Jamal on the floor, it is survivable. Maybe that's why they are playing Jamal so much, and maybe that is a reason to try to get some Julian point guard lineups in there. But you could also just play Russ with Jokic more and play Jamal somewhere with the bench. But they're just not doing that this year. Like, they just stopped doing that, even though they've been doing that for years. So I don't know what's going on there, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, whatever happens with Julian on offense, his focus kind of has to be on his defense right now, and he's got to be improving in that area. I'm thinking of all kinds of crazy shit, like Julian at point guard could show off some other skills that could entice people in trades for him, because
That's
I'm like,
fair.
I don't know. That's a
We
wild.
could do like the Warriors are doing, where they're starting Kaminga to try to juice his stats and get him try to juice his trade value too.
I don't want to trade Julian. It's just I think he's one of the only like players that someone would trade for with some upside.
I like Julian's aura too. He just has such good energy to him, and kind of need that this season. But we might not be able to afford good energy if they're not on track to make the playoffs. And actually, let's just give a quick update on where the team stands right now. The Denver Nuggets are sitting in 7th in the West at the moment. We've played a lot fewer games than everybody else, but we're 6th in the loss column among West teams. We're not actually that far off from like top 4. We're only 2 losses off from 2nd in the West, actually. But they'd have to start winning more games. Continuing to go 500 as they have it's just not acceptable for a team of their caliber with respect to their expectations.
Yeah, talking about the standings is depressing because I've just talked so much shit about the East getting free wins from the Wizards all the time, and
we gave it up.
Just lost.
We gave it up. Yeah,
and it's like if you're in the West and you lost to the bottom East team, like you are not getting a top 3
You're down
seed.
bad. And I completely concur with the feeling of like, man, I can't clown on these East teams.
I know.
That's what made me really mad. Okay, next question is from Scott Rupp on Twitter, who asks, accounting for contract structure, health, and ability, which player makes the most sense to cut? And it seems like you're talking about Julian making the most sense.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't cut him. Like if he's just like who he's straight up
I think he's talking about cut or trade, maybe.
Oh, well, if it's to trade, I think the players that make the most sense are, unfortunately, Julian and MPJ just because they're valuable and like teams would want them, right?
That makes sense.
I don't want to do that, but it's just like that's
But
what's gonna like
that's the
give
thing. You don't
you.
want to trade your valuable players.
We would have to trade Mike and to break it up to try and get more reliable depth and or defense. That'd be like the idea. But if you don't want to go that route and you want to go more on the margins or whatever, you're trying to get off Zeke. That's clearly something we want to do. He has a lot of money on his contract, so just cutting him doesn't make sense.
So.
I would like cut Pickett and or Vlatko, right?
So that was my answer was Vlatko, but he's Jokic's friend. And as terribly as the season is going, like I'm not cutting Jokic's best friend on the team.
Yeah, that's kind of scary after his comments and everything now.
Yeah. Like
if
number one is keeping
help.
Jokic happy. Number two is this team stays competitive around him. And if that means keeping Vlatko, then then again, if we got Mitch, maybe it'd be okay if we got Vlatko.
Yeah, exactly. You get another friend in there for him.
I think that's why CT Fazio didn't like me, to be honest.
So because it would mean Vlatko's second fiddle.
Like on the chopping block, he's more vulnerable if Jokic has another friend. But yeah, Vlatko, we didn't talk about this, but he had arthroscopic surgery on his knee recently following the sprain and clearly some more severe injury that happened after he had that Statue of Liberty dunk on versus the Grizzlies in a game where he was playing well. Like they were winning those minutes, and I was like, oh my god, it's happening. That's crazy. But of course, luck just doesn't last for that kid, as Malone refers to him. He's supposed to be reevaluated in February, I believe. And that just goes along with how the rest of the roster was put together. You already talked about the Hunter and Pickett contracts. Like we're talking about potentially like cutting a guy, not necessarily trading them. Like these aren't guys that like other teams are necessarily interested in right now. Although Hunter, like I still have like a question mark about that in like the good way. I think that a team could be interested in him just because the contract is so small and he's like a hustle guy and he's been able to play like some minutes even against some real teams. Like we talked about how OKC somehow allowed him to play 20 minutes in that game. That was hilarious. But
plus it's just like I think the strategy will be to try to keep everyone to trade first because like the dollars and cents are so weird. You could include a bunch of guys to match salaries and whatever, and then after that, depending on how that shakes out, and you're like trying to get a buyout guy or whatever, you're just trying to sign someone.
I agree with that. Well, we had one more, not a question for the mailbag, but somebody commented on our YouTube post. Oh, it's Tim Cronin, who also interacts with us on Twitter.
Yeah.
Tim says the defense needs to be better. I agree, Tim. When the D gets stops, we're more likely to score and be able to reset our defense. This leads to runs. That is correct, Tim. You are 100% correct. I've been saying this all season. The Nuggets look like the Nuggets again when they start playing defense, and that has been really the biggest issue sort of team-wide in terms of on-court play this season. Regardless of how people think the offense looks eye test-wise, they're fifth in offense this season pretty solidly. And the other thing, I haven't talked about this, but we talked about how the Nuggets were playing faster this year and we didn't know if it would last. It is lasting. They're top 5 in pace still this season as well, which is, I didn't expect that to necessarily hold, but it's been an emphasis. And if you could say anything about like, oh, have the coaches lost the locker room? I think the coaches have made pace and emphasis and the team is executing on that because we know last year they were not trying to be top 5 in pace. They were 27th again, as we talked about. So that's something that's breaking through with the team at least.
I think like the additions and with Christian and all the kinds of younger players who can run, and with Jokic being able to pass it like up the court so well too, lends itself to that. But yeah, it's like how much can we take advantage of fast break if we can't get any stops? Yeah.
Next episode, I'd love to have a deeper dive on the offense of this season because it's the only thing that's like by the numbers actually looked good. So maybe we could talk about why it isn't matching up with how we feel about the offense this season in our next episode. Well, if you have watched to this point, thank you so much. You probably are subscribed if you have watched to this point. But if you're not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. And if you like our content, please remember to hit the like bell. Please share our show. We're trying to grow the channel. Please hit the notification bell. We also have our clip channel at What's in a Game NBA Clips. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks. It really sucks.